Hi, Martha. So nice
Hello,
to see you.
good to
Finally,
meet.
after our conversation
Yes,
through email. Okay, so today we're talking with Martha Atienza, uh, the artist that we produced the work with that was shown at the Istanbul Biennale. And we're going to talk about the work and your life and your activism. But I want to mention something else before. I was in Dubai a couple of weeks ago and at Al Jamil, and I walked around a little bit in the different areas, and I came into a very dark room, and all of a sudden I saw a man in a very strange suit coming by, and then I saw a woman, and then I saw somebody else, and they were sort of moving as though they were in a dream, and it felt that they were in an aquarium, really, in a big box with water. And I thought, how did they get these people in here, and how did they stay? How can they stay so long here? And it was only when I came very close that I saw that it was one of your videos. But it was so impressive because it felt so real. It really felt as though those people were there. This is a work you've made a while ago, right?
yeah, it was in 2017. Uh,
Yeah,
it's it's part of an Our Islands, a bigger project called Our Islands, and I put the coordinates of the place, which is in Bantayan in Malbago.
yeah.
Bantayan Island is in the center of the Philippines. It's in between the Tanyan Strait and the Visayan Sea, and that's where we are. That's where I am right now.
That's where we are now. That's where you are
Yeah,
now, and
I
I'm
am
there
right now.
indirectly.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes. Yeah, that work I made together with my friends and my neighbors. I used to live on the coastal area, just in the north of the island. And we started working together in 2010 and it was actually the first time that I'd ever received funding. And the project was called Gilubong ang akong pusod sa dagat, which means my navel is buried in the sea. And it
Yeah.
was really about finding that, understanding that connection we have with water and a relationship with it. And I came back to Bantayan Island where my parents live, and I actually I jumped on ships for that project. So I was in the Netherlands and I jumped on riverboats filming my brother who was working on a riverboat, going from Rotterdam to Germany, and that was the start of the project. And I for actually the 5 years, I filmed men that I knew specifically from Bantayan Island on international cargo ships and on fishing boats here. And through the material that I gathered, it was a way for all of us, and it wasn't planned, but what happened was when I came back to Bantayan and I showed these images of the men working with their family, and I showed it just on a laptop with the families. Um, I realized that it was so important to have that dialogue, that conversation about what they do so far away, not just the dangers, but where they are in the world, you know. And so for around 2 years, it was mostly about creating those conversations, and they started very informal, and they got more and more formalized until we created the together with my friends and my family. My brothers always work with me. They have no choice. But we created an installation in the center of the town, and which is where the church is in the plaza. And after 2 years of really starting informally and having these dialogues, um, we created a huge installation in the plaza, and it was about 600 people. And it was just projections on bed sheets. It was three screen, and we repeated the images, and we had gathering of. I mean, this was already 2 years of building up. I think if we would have done it straight away, doing an installation like that, it would have been received maybe differently. But because um, people really saw it as an opportunity to talk about, their fathers on ships, their sons on ships, it was really an amazing experience for me, and it was really the start of all the other works that I've been doing now. I feel like that was the project that never ended, you know. So that the men that I filmed on the fishing boats, and that I've been working with, those are also the guys that you saw in that video underwater, where we kind of there is a festival yearly. So for that first project, I filmed everything, and I also filmed a yearly festival that we have, which is the Atienza Festival, and kind of what happens with these friends of mine, because there's a lot of, it's a festival. It's actually religious, but because of all the drinking, also all this kind of spontaneous costumes come out. And I used to film it really just so that when we were doing those dialogues with the videos, and the topics were so heavy, um, that we needed something to kind of laugh at ourselves. And it was also kind of people getting, for people themselves to see themselves for the first time. But after I'd been documenting it for so many years now, I also realized that how important it was, the costumes that they came up with, and that it was saying so much about where we are in the Philippines right now, politically. After the super typhoon Haiyan, when the festival was done after that storm, there was a costume of the Yolanda survivor. I'm not sure if you saw it in the underwater video.
Yeah.
So in 2017, I asked my friends and said, we're dealing so many issues we've been doing, and we're also talking about the environmental impact that is affecting us here with the rising seas and the changing of the temperature, and the damage to our sea, and how this is affecting our livelihood and our way of living. What if we do what you do yearly, and we pick some of those costumes out, and let's do it underwater, so that we talk about all these things at the same time. And so yeah, 16 friends came, and they're actually compressor divers, and they did it underwater. All of us on boats, and we did it in one take. We did a lot of practicing, and it took us about 6 months to get to that point of filming it. Yeah.
It is so impressive to see, because the way people move underwater, it's sort of like a slow motion, but it's very elegant at the same time as well. And there's the diversity of all the different costumes, and it's surprising often, and it sort of goes on. So when you sit there, you say, so where are these people going when they're off screen, And,
Yeah.
and you feel part of it.
It's always been important for me that, the reason why I really wanted to go back to Bantayan. I mean, I studied in the Netherlands. I went to the art school in the eastern part of Holland. And I kind of felt that, I realized that with I chose video really as a medium, because I thought it was something I could bring back to the Philippines, because everyone has a TV here. And so when I came back here, I thought it would be so important to make work together with people I know here, but also have them be the main audience, really. And so something so important to me is that even though we're talking about very heavy issues, I want them to be really proud of seeing themselves, because especially for fishing communities, they always feel that they are the least important, let's say, in society, because
And that's how they're treated as well,
they are
right?
treated, and
Yeah.
because they are treated that way. So, even when we started the dialogues in 2011, um, it was getting the group of fisher folks together with international seafarers, because we have a huge dislocation happening here in our communities, because the international seafarers are earning so much in dollars and euros, and the fishermen are, of course, surviving, living by day,
Mhm.
And so the first thing I thought, oh, I'll just get the two groups together and have them have this conversation. But it took 2 years to actually come to that point, because the first time when I put them together, they didn't even want to look each other in the eye. I mean, the fisherman he felt so much less than the international seafarer who has his golden ring, even though they were neighbors and they grew up together.
When you
So
say international seafarers, are those the people who work on cruise ships and other ships?
yeah, cruise ship, cargo ships.
Right.
No, there's so many Filipino men or women now also on international ships. Yeah, yeah.
And so the neighbors felt intimidated by them because they had become part of the bigger world, as it were.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it sounds very it's also because they are successful because they're earning so much, and so they build huge houses, you know, big
Ah,
cement houses with gates, and and so you know, the when I moved here when I was very young, we didn't have electricity, and most of the houses here were, you know, from made from coconut and natural material. Well, now everybody is building big cement houses with and have a car. You know, these changes have come, but for mostly for fisher folk families here, they've kind of remained the same because they also don't own land. Anyways, these are the topics actually that I've kind of moved in now with my latest works, you know. I've moved from having those conversations to, you know, how could I as an artist and my work become useful or actually create those changes that maybe we really talk about or dream about. Because in 2017, after winning that work that you saw won a prize in the Arts Basel, Switzerland, the Baloise Prize, it's called. And you know, that really kind of gave me a boost as an artist. But when I came back here, I was so you know, things had just gone worse here. So that work really made me think about how to be successful maybe internationally in the art world does not mean at all that there's changes here. And so I've been striving to move those things, you know what I mean?
yes,
So
I know what you
that
mean.
level of success should
Yes,
also be here on the island, you know,
I
and
can.
success that we need, perhaps. Yeah.
I can see
Yeah.
that it's kind of bittersweet that you come back from Switzerland with this award, and then the people that you've created the work with, that are the source of your inspiration, are not doing well, and because they are part of the work, right? Really,
Yeah.
in your
Definitely.
life, everything is intertwined, as it were, right? The people you live
Yeah.
with, the work that you do, it's all
Yeah.
one. It's art as activism, and activism as art, and I guess it's really beyond labels.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why you know, for the work produced in Istanbul, I proposed of creating a Fisher Folks Day because it was kind of moving more towards um uh working together with the government and really looking at changes expected from higher up, you know, from our leaders. Um you know, when you say create a voice, that we truly create a voice. So that would be saying that fishing communities would have a platform to voice out what their issues are and what they themselves find necessary to happen. So we, you know, we were able to establish Fisher Folks Day, and so we got an ordinance. After it was beautiful, it was quite an emotional. I tried to capture that on camera, but it was a completely different thing in real life. Uh, I was holding the camera. I still remember thinking, should I hold the camera or not? But it was good that I maybe had that so that I anyways, that's maybe another conversation. But um, we were able to gather 37 coastal communities and leaders. We had to focus on leaders only. And we were able to get about 40 something boats on the water and go around the town to really show uh, the importance of small fisher folks here in the not only in Bantayan Island but in the Philippines. And so after we were able to establish that event, we were able to get an ordinance, and this is going to happen now yearly, and it's happening this May, the 31st. And so the local government unit has now the responsibility of giving that day and that platform for fisher folks. And
And you
so
had
for
an
the
important meeting yesterday about that, right?
sadly, it didn't push through, so I don't have
Okay.
yeah. But there is a
Is that
program.
typical that meetings don't happen?
Yes, sadly,
Okay.
I was, you know, I'm very much trying to be optimistic in collaboration. I really believe that the only way that we are able to make changes that we're talking about is to include everyone. And so that's why, you know, we also created this organization called Woodland because if we have an official body, we hopefully will be allowed to participate and join the table and have and create that voice for uh, communities, not just fisher folks communities here, but also farmers. So it's quite now it's reached the point where I maybe wasn't even ready for that responsibility, because now all of a sudden I'm being or invited to meet with the mayor, and my opinion, and I have to be sure that I am giving the right voice and that I'm saying the right thing. So it's quite a responsibility. Um, we had an email conversation about that thin line, of where, which part of it is the art and the art process, and which part is maybe something else.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was, maybe a few years ago, I was much more confident in saying that everything you do is art. And maybe now I'm also come to a point where maybe I am also clearly, maybe personally feeling where the art maybe ends,
Mhm.
and that would maybe, I think, the strength of I'll just call it the art is really that it brings everybody together, and it can talk about very sensitive things that perhaps in other types of gatherings will not happen. And
That's absolutely true. It gives a certain structure that creates distance, but at the same time shows what's going on. So that's why I'm struck by the fact that you said that you showed a couple of years ago the films first to the people, so they saw themselves on the screen. That in itself must have been quite an important step for them, and a part of a development, because it's like looking in the mirror all of a sudden.
this was also a different time, in 2010, or even before, earlier, I'd started with working this way. I thought I was the first person holding a camera that would film things happening without letting uh, people participate, let's say, or just daily life. But later on, I learned by learning about other filmmakers or artists that this had been done a long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
But what I think it was really important for me to be, because if I would show images from Bantayan Island or in the Philippines, and let's say I would bring it to the Netherlands, of course it would be very exotic. So it would always be interesting to anyone watching. So for me personally, I had the need of, I think the at that time I really felt that I wanted maybe the validation of the people that I had filmed, because then I could truly say that perhaps I was doing something right, you
Yeah.
know. So
Th- th-
coming back here, yeah,
this is a very important point, I think, for many artists. How to the connection with the people that they film, and I know of many artists that we work with who establish a conversation with the people first, and it's not like they go in and shoot. It is a long process, and a lot of it we don't even see on video.
yeah, yeah,
And,
definitely.
but I think when you talk about this, I feel that without even thinking of the end product, the videos that we see, the whole process of collaboration, of starting a dialogue in itself is already so valuable.
Very, very. And sometimes, I'd even I have conversations because I work a lot with my brothers, and especially with them, like, how do we, because the process is so important. How would we share this? Because in a way, it's already building models of
Yeah,
how this way of working could be applied elsewhere. I had my brother going. He stayed in the Kingdom of Tonga for a while, and he was doing his own research there, and that was part of our island project of really saying, how do we reach out to other islands and have these who have the same concerns of, not just their land disappearing with the change of climate, but also their cultures disappearing. And how do we deal with that? How do we connect with each other? And I think we were very over ambitious with that. But and now I've come to kind of back and saying we really need to have this conversation here and see how people themselves would share it then. Like for example, a lot of the work that I do is that I teach people how to use the camera, and that's something that I've always been able to teach. So instead of me going in and filming, it's really about showing people what this tool is and how powerful it is, and how also for me beautiful it is, and see how people themselves then start to use it. So we work especially a lot with young people because they usually have the luxury of time, to do this. So that's why when in Istanbul, when they asked me what would be in the install, I really wanted to include the works done by the young people in that whole process, because the process of coming to the Fisher Folks Day, it took 2 years, and it so many other things happened that perhaps we cannot show in the space. But for me, I think it tells a lot when young people themselves find this tool and then have something so important to include to say.
How did
Um,
they react when you gave them the camera?
of course, the bigger the camera, the better. No,
Yeah,
they're so excited. Young people always excited about, and now it's different than when I started.
because
Now they
people are used with their telephone, of course.
exactly now they love, especially here I have to say in the Philippines, TikTok. All
Yeah,
they all want to become vloggers now.
yeah.
I have to say in the Philippines, people love being in front of the camera. So it's very interesting how they use the camera. And of course, I do have influence, but then together with the, let's say, the older people, the leaders and so on, of what kind of direction we're kind of pushing the youth in the sense that, the youth in Mambacayao Dako, a small island here that we are working, the because of the pandemic, then there was no school and it was all online. They were very busy with their reef and how they wanted this to be a protected area. So of course, when we came in and gave them the workshops and showed them how to use the camera, they already knew that they wanted to talk about the reef. I was personally a bit afraid, maybe with all the other elders, that they might want to do a typical love story, or but they didn't. And so the young people that made a film in the watershed area in the center of the islands, um, they actually helped the young people make the other uh, group on the island make that film about their marine protected area that they wanted this. So they then later on did the other film and helped each other. So it was kind of an inland and an island coastal area exchange with young people that we did for 2 years,
Yeah.
uh, which I mostly learned so much from, and I'm trying to now create programs out of those experiences of I think it's very important that the island now is changing so much. There's so much tourism coming in. During the pandemic, they built a huge airport. I'm happy that there's no commercial flights coming in yet, but this might happen soon. On the tourist side, it's very busy. Roads are being built, so this type of development is happening so fast. And how do we still get young people or people here interested um in what is going on the island, and maybe see it from another point of view, because it's quite scary that when they look at tourism, they think that they're all going to have some of these dollars, or it's very kind of everybody thinks they're going to get rich, but in reality what's happening is that they're losing their land, because they've since the super typhoon Haiyan in 2013, about 9,000 families have been moved already inland. And this is really for safety purposes. But for me, now that this has been going on for quite a while, it's also been very convenient to now have moved these people off the coast and far inland most of the time, because now all the coastal areas are readily available to build huge resorts and so on. And
And working in tourism also has perhaps some advantages when you're so interested in getting the dollars and your golden rings, but it has many disadvantages as well. Obviously, you're being confronted with different cultures, also in a very different setting because people are on holiday. So you get a bit of a distorted view of what life is like somewhere else. And then, of course, you become very vulnerable because the moment the economy is not going well or there are problems, you may lose your job and then you have nothing to fall back on. So it
Yeah,
might look very glamorous in the beginning, but it's a trap
definitely.
in a sense.
And that's why I think now I'm in that point of how to use what I do as a way to make people aware about this. And not so much really saying that we are attacking government on this, but I think it's just very much a real conversation about we can look at other places, and we can come to this conclusion that people's way of life are in danger, and ownership of land is very important. So actually, this is what I'm working on right now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. One more thing, Marta, when even for ourselves, for you and me, when we you make make a video of your surroundings, I write about my surroundings, so you have the things that you're familiar with, but because you're filming it or because you're writing about it, you look at it differently all of a sudden. It's as though there's a different dimension. You sort of become an outsider of your own inside environment. And I imagine that happens with these young children, as young kids
that's
as
what I
well.
want to share with people
Yeah.
here, because if you can just see yourself from another perspective,
Right.
you will have the ability to analyze and to understand.
You take a
And I
certain
think,
distance. Yeah.
yeah, and I think because I'm half Dutch, half Filipino, and I have moved between these two cultures so much, and also I was brought up in this, always analyzing the moving, and so I have it maybe naturally that I'm always kind of I have the ability to be the outsider and look in, and I've realized how important this is, that the work could be used for that exactly. And so when we are documenting here, or people are documenting themselves, or people see themselves, and even if it's just in a very daily setting, all of a sudden something happens.
Yeah.
And I think if we that sensitive moment, if we can hold on to that, I think then we can slowly have changes. It's a change in way of thinking that really is the ultimate goal.
Yeah. So it's the changing in the people themselves, right?
Yes, yes, yeah.
But so the whole idea of communalism, the bond you have with the people that are close to the sea, it all comes from your own life as well, right? It's not something that's foreign to you.
No, no, no. My father was a sea captain. My mother was working on the Holland America line, and that's how they met. They met when they were working on ships, and then they traveled together because my father was allowed to bring my mom on international cargo ships. And I think that, yeah, they traveled for about 2 years. And I found old 8 millimeter film of their travels, and
Oh,
I
that
just
must be
had a,
wonderful.
oh,
You should
beautiful.
do something with this.
Yeah, yes, definitely. I found so much though that they'd never developed that really couldn't be saved, but the rest of it I have digitalized, and it was that experience that I myself had with that, and it was really about understanding myself when I started, understanding my father, who came from this tiny island in the center of the Philippines, and how did he look back at his at this island when he was far away and exposed to all these different cultures and worlds. Because in the 70s, shipping was completely different. They would be at the harbor for maybe 3 to 4 weeks. They had so much time to integrate, to learn about the culture. Seafarers now, I had a very romantic idea of getting on board international ships. But when I went on board, in Rotterdam, it just took 4 hours. It was all automated. There's no human connection anymore.
No,
It's not about exploring anymore.
no.
But in his time, it was. So I think I try to keep that kind of curiosity, with, I think, the magic of moving image or video, or what you call it. It's you can really bring everyone with you to another place, and it can be so intimate.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I already see this huge work starting with the old 8 millimeter the film of your father, and then going on to your own work. So it really is a line that goes on in history. That's really beautiful.
Yes, you know what? I always wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. I just never could. I just don't
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have the narrative in that sense, you know. Yeah, it's very connected, and I'm always honest about that, you know, that it's very personal, and it's very I'm also very protective of people I film, because I don't want them to be seen in a certain way that that would be kind of using them, you know? So I think I'm very critical of myself, and it takes me a long time to actually produce works because I want to go through that process, and I want to be sure that that it's safe, that and if I bring anything out, that it's representing everybody, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I think our conversation is coming to an end, at least the one on video. I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
continue
Yeah.
personally in another setting. But it is so wonderful to see the different functions of art really in what you're doing, right? It's art as a way, as an instrument for people to reflect on their own situation. Also art as a way to make the rest of the world known of what's going on, and
Yeah.
art as an aesthetic experience as well. It's all
Yeah.
these three, and perhaps there are even more layers that have to do that. Art going back to history, the personalities that come out.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, and I have to say, because of art, Martha, we're talking now together. Otherwise, that
Yes,
never have
exactly. It's
met you.
connecting
So
us.
that in itself tells you how important art is. So thank you very much for talking to us, and good luck on your voyage.
Thank you so much, Han. Thank you for this
You're welcome.
conversation. It's so good to talk to you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.